This is the Ruhr. This is a coal mine. And this is me. Name, Hans Fischer. Age, 26. Profession, optimist. There are thousands of us all together, working in 150 different pits. We mine hope. 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. We come from all over Germany, from all trades and all backgrounds. The work is hard and dirty. They say a miner has to be part chimney sweep, part ditch digger, and part crazy. Anyway, you can see for yourselves it's no fun. So maybe some of you are wondering just why we do it. Well, I can't speak for all of us, of course, but I'd like to tell you why I came and why I stayed. Maybe you remember that newsreel last year, the one that showed the 1,000th Ruhr volunteer from the American zone. They made quite a ceremony out of it. There I am, that's me, just behind the guy in the white sweater. I was number 987. Later, they made some speeches, all about doing our bit, things like that. Listen, we were going to the Ruhr for calories, clothes, and a roof over our heads. And we didn't kid ourselves. We got our first look at the place next morning. Nothing for a picture postcard, but then we hadn't come for the scenery. That first meal was wonderful, all 1,500 calories of it. The processing began right away. Medical checkups and all that. To tell you the truth, it reminded me a little of when I was drafted. Except this time the shoes fit, and the beds were softer too. I decided the Ruhr and I would get along fine. We went to school 2 days after that, learned to speak mine language, and got introduced to some of the tools of the trade. And finally the day came, and we went down for the first time. Well, I had that roof over my head, even if it was 380 feet thick. Pretty soon it became a routine. Go down, pick, load, load, pick, come up again. The only thing miners have in common with big-time operators is the color black. A hot shower soon removes the evidence. As I said, it got to be a routine. I even got used to hanging my clothes 30 feet up in the air. Yes, I got my clothes. New clothes, bought by the point system. That's a special procedure worked out for us. The harder you work, the more points. The more points, the more you can buy. I couldn't complain. I was getting what I came for. And then I heard about something else. Something I hadn't come for. It had been in the papers for months, of course, but I didn't pay much attention till one day when I saw how it tied in with coal. It's pretty complicated, but I think I've got it figured out now. It was Mr. Marshall's idea in the first place. He's the foreign minister of the USA. He sprang the idea in a speech last year in America. First, he pointed out what a tough time all Europe was having recovering from the war. It wasn't just that factories were bombed or transport systems all chewed up. War threw a monkey wrench into the whole machinery of European trade. Industry and commerce were in a mess. From Stalingrad to Paris, from Copenhagen to Turin. Unless something was done about it, Europe might just go kaput. Because when people get hungry enough, or cold enough, or hopeless enough, they start to look for the easy answers. Uniforms and slogans, violence and barbed wire. And the world couldn't take that again. But what was the answer? Mr. Marshall proposed giving U.S. aid to help Europe help itself. This is what he said. Any government that is willing to assist in the task of recovery will find full cooperation from the United States. Governments, political parties, or groups which seek to perpetuate human misery in order to profit therefrom politically or otherwise will encounter the opposition of the United States. It would not be fitting for the U.S. government to undertake to draw up unilaterally a program designed to place Europe on its feet economically. That is the business of Europeans. The role of this country should consist of friendly aid in the drafting of a European program and of later support of such a program. In other words, the aid would be American, the teamwork and the brainwork strictly European. Everybody called it the Marshall Plan. They liked the idea in London. The British wanted every country in Europe to meet and work out a recovery program together. And it went over big in Paris. The French wanted European cooperation to get the wheels turning again. But Moscow wasn't interested. The Russians said they thought the whole thing would lead to interference in a country's private affairs. Funny. I thought European recovery was everybody's business. Anyway, when the Marshall Plan countries finally got together, there were 16 of them. Which ones? Let's look at the map. The question America really asked Europe was, do you want our help in a European recovery plan? These countries, following Russia, said no. These countries, including Western Germany, said yes. Czechoslovakia couldn't make up its mind. This was the situation in black and white, you might say. The yes countries went to work and drew up a kind of blueprint for recovery. They wanted increased production, financial stability, and world trade. And they wanted to get it by working together over a 4-year period. U.S. aid was going to be just the spark that ignited the engine. After that, the participating countries themselves would be at the controls. Each country had its own special problem, of course, but the principle was always the same. Let's look at Germany's case, for instance. Before the war, Germany imported right and left, mostly food and raw materials. She paid for them with the products from her mines and factories. The war took care of that. About the only thing we had left to sell was scrap iron. And lots of other countries were already well supplied. Of course, production got started again one way or another. But today it's still below what we managed before the war. Look at the situation right in my mind, for instance. There's not enough coal because there's not enough machinery. There's not enough machinery because there's not enough steel. And there's not enough steel because there's not enough coal. That, in case you didn't know it, is what's called a vicious circle. Or take another case. No farm equipment, no food. No food, no production. No production, no export. No export, no import. No import, no farm equipment, no food, and you're back where you started, with nothing. But coal is the crux of the whole thing. Because even when it's not mixed up with food or steel, it's producing heat, power, and light for other industries that are. And the vicious circles aren't just German either. They're international. Many countries which send raw materials to Germany need Ruhr coal for their own industries. Still, with no machinery and all the other problems, our Ruhr coal production last year was only half of the wartime peak. Something had to be done. And something was done. In Washington, where the U.S. Congress finally voted about $5.5 billion for aid to Europe. Of course, the money had to be spread over 16 countries, but there was a lot to go around. Here's roughly what the distribution looks like. Germany's case is special. Beside the Marshall Plan money itself, she's getting about $658 million in special funds. That moves her from 5th place up to 3rd. All this money will be spent the way the 16 nations wanted it spent. U.S. aid for the first year will look something like this. But Germany is getting more than just the credits given her directly by the USA. Many other countries are coming to Germany to spend their Marshall Plan money on German products. That business doesn't only mean dollars for Germany. It's the beginning of new German trade with Europe and the whole world. The way I see it, American aid means enough steel to provide for peacetime industry, enough machinery to turn out the goods we need, enough raw materials to keep those machines humming, enough exports to pay for our imports, enough bread and butter, enough pots and pans, and above all, enough coal to get the wheels turning at top speed again. That's how we can finally revive trade and commerce, in and out of Germany and England, France, and all the other countries that believe in working together. We've got the spark now, a $5.5 billion spark, and the engine is turning over. I like being part of all this. It's something big and good, and I think it's going to pay off. For Europe, for Germany, yes, and for me too. That's why I'm down here, 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. The name? Hans Fischer. The profession? Just call me a Marshall Planner.